Welcome to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. I'm your host, Nicole, and this podcast is your guide to start creating a lifestyle by design. From entrepreneurship, money and finance, taxes and residencies, and everything in between, this show highlights the nuances of a true global citizen lifestyle. Let's dive in. Shannon, welcome to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. Now, I am very much so looking forward to diving into all things real estate today, but before we dive in, I would love to hear a little bit more about yourself, your story, where you started, and how you got to where you are today.
Well, my story is a bit unusual because I started in my childhood. I was the son of a builder and developer. And my mother was a third-generation real estate broker. And so I grew up, for those of you that have read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I'm assuming most of you have, I grew up at Poor Dad's table, the one that looked poor, and there was a saying in our house that my parents were dirt poor because they owned a lot of dirt, they owned a lot of real estate. But I never really knew that my parents had any money until I was graduating from high school, and they started to see the fruits of their labor. They had done a lot of industrial stuff. They'd done some office stuff. They'd done some residential. And I started to see that they really had a lifestyle that wasn't going to be dependent on them any longer. My parents retired when they were 50 on cash flow. And I just talked with them this morning. They're in Norway, and they have a very nomadic lifestyle because they have an inflation-adjusted lifestyle. Over the last 25 years, they've continued to live the same life they've always lived because the cash flow has continued to inflate with rents and things like that. So following that journey, I built my first industrial project for myself in 2001, the same year my parents retired. And I had a for-profit, construction company that I during that time turned it into a nonprofit because I took all the money out of the company and I built this first project. And I realized very quickly that wasn't a healthy thing to do. I couldn't rob Peter to pay Paul and expect Peter to keep showing up. And so over the last 23 years, I've been in construction and development for almost 30. But over the last 23 years, that process has continued to evolve. And I have worked with high net worth individuals on single projects where it's, me and a doctor, me and a well-to-do real estate broker. And we've done a project and we've made profits and we've had our splits and things like that. But in 2017, I did my last project with a single entity where we built a 180-unit apartment complex with a family office. They brought $19 million to the deal. We did it. We had a fantastic exit in 22, sorry. But I realized that I was tied to a single source, and I had to go keep finding one person that could write huge checks. And I began to syndicate capital in late 2019. And since then, we've syndicated about $67 million worth of capital from various sources, mostly people that just live normal lives. They have a 9-to-5 job. They're doing well with what they have in life, but they don't want to become a landlord. They don't want to become somebody that's constantly working on properties. They want the freedom of that, and they want the expertise that they don't want to go out and get. And so they partner with us through a syndication, and we do construction and development and acquisition and rehab and all of those kinds of things. So we take care of all the heavy lifting. They get to enjoy that lifestyle. And so that's kind of been my journey. And in that journey, we've done almost $500 million worth of new construction and development. And we have, like I said, we raised about $68 million of other people's money to go along with our own funds that we put into our deals and manage for our partners.
I love that. And that is the best kind of money, is other people's money. So I'm curious to contrast the more traditional, I think, when a lot of people think of real estate, and I think this is increasingly changing, but the traditional real estate method of potentially single family homes, or maybe you're looking at like a fourplex or duplex or whatever it may be, versus syndications. If you don't mind explaining a little bit more about what syndications are, and then some of the pros and cons of each.
Well, I'm able to go back through my life's work, and I'm able to see all the things that I did that a lot of people think they want to do. I mean, I bought a house for $5,000 and I moved it, right? I put it on a new foundation, on a new piece of property. I hooked up all the utilities, and that's an extreme. I've remodeled. I've done everything you could possibly do in that space, and it's taken me 30 years to get really, really good at it. And a lot of people don't want to do that, right? I hear people all the time saying, "Well, I'm gonna do the BRRRR strategy, and I'm gonna be my own general contractor." And the first thing I would tell that person is go ahead and grab your tax return and go to the gross income and divide that by 52 weeks in a year, and then divide that by 40 hours in a week. And look at what you make on an hourly basis, and then look at what a handyman makes or a laborer makes, and that's what you're going to do. You're going to go work your overtime hours, which should be at least time and a half, at these kind of wages. So you could either go work time and a half at your job and create additional income at something you're really good at, or you could go learn this other stuff and go to the school of hard knocks, or you could partner with somebody that already has done all that learning. And a lot of people kind of get a little bit of a befuddled look on their face, and they're like, "Well, why would you tell me that?" And I'm like, "Because I want to save you the effort of having to go spend the 10,000 hours to become a professional at this other thing." And I think as mainly as Americans, but we're programmed to learn and do everything ourselves. But a lot of times all we do is we buy ourselves another job. We literally go out and we think we're going to go put all this money into a house. We're going to fix it. We're going to rehab it. We're going to paint it. We're going to DIY it. It's going to be fabulous, and we're going to make some money. And you will. But based on the hours that you put in, did you do better than partnering with somebody else or by just working overtime at the job you currently have?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs go into being an entrepreneur thinking, it's going to be a great lifestyle. I'm going to make all this money. Well, sometimes you're just trading one job for another job, and it's definitely not a lifestyle that is fulfilling and or sustainable for everybody. So let's talk a little bit about the syndication aspect of things. If you don't mind explaining a little bit about what that is and how you have really used your decades of experience and brought that into syndications and how that's kind of the method that you're going with now.
Well, syndication isn't really anything more than a fancy word for partnership. And if you look at a syndication, we have one going right now. We just gained occupancy and we're leasing up on a brand new apartment complex. And I went and found that deal. I got it all entitled. I brought it to my investors. And I said, guys, we need to come up with $4 million in capital to go along with it, an $11 million bank loan. And we're going to build this project. And when it's done, it's going to be worth $18 million, right? Because in development, you're doing the original value add. You're taking the sticks and the stones, you're putting them together in a way, in a fashion that somebody's going to want to rent. You're putting the income in there, and now you've created the value add, right? And so I came to my partners and I said, we need to raise $400,000 or $4 million. Of that, I'm going to put in 5% of my own capital. So I always have skin in every single game. Even though I did all the entitlements, I didn't charge my partners for that. Even though I had the land under contract, I didn't charge my partners for that. I put in all my work at cost, and then I put in the required capital to match that 5%. And then we raised the other $3.7 million. And we put together this partnership. And the way the partnership is structured is that we go out and we build the project. We take care of all the things that happen there. We hire the leasing company. We do all those kinds of things. And when it's done, then we go and we find realtors that want to buy it. We get the product under contract. We get it sold. We take care of soup to nuts, all the things that happen in that deal. I sign personally for all the loans, all the completion guarantees, all the GMAX contracts, all of that stuff. All of that weight is on me. The only thing that the limited partner has to do is show up with their money. And they come into that partnership, and we have an arrangement in that partnership that says, hey, I'm going to make profits for the company. Now, if there's a distribution schedule called a waterfall. And that means that the better I do, the more money I make you, the more I earn. And I think that's the proper way to align everybody, because that's going to make me want to work harder. If I make $10 for doing the whole thing, regardless of whether or not we're profitable, I'm not going to be very motivated. But if I know that if I do an okay job, I can make $10, but if I do a great job, I can make $50. And if I do a phenomenal job, I can make $200. Then that's what motivates me, right? And that's what makes me pay attention to all the little things along the way. And so we set that up that the limited partners' only liability is the capital that they inject. They have no recourse to them on any of the loans or anything like that, but they have the upside of the potentials of the profits. And our past track record is that we have returned 20+% annually on those investments, some as high as 58% annually. We've been very, very blessed with how we do those things. But I believe a lot of that has to do with my 30-year track record and the fact that I've seen all different kinds of market cycles. I've seen all different kinds of construction issues. And so you're taking all of that experience, plus the experience of my whole team, my property managers, my project managers, my superintendents, all of those people are now working for you. And you have the only risk you have is the actual capital, where you take somebody that's going to do a fix and flip. They have their capital. They are the labor. They're hiring the contractor. They don't know if the contractor's a good contractor. They haven't vetted them. And they also have the loan that they are liable for. So if something goes wrong, they have all of that liability, right? And so that's really the benefit of that structure, is you're buying somebody else's experience. You're buying somebody else's deal flow pipeline. You're buying all the expertise that comes with their years in the business, and you're capitalizing on that. And you're saying the more you make for you, the more you make for me, the more you also get to make. So I essentially become an employee of all my partners.
Are you interested in becoming a global citizen and living a lifestyle by design in a country that aligns with you? If this is a lifestyle that you're seeking to create, we can help. Whether it be multiple residencies, citizenships, bank accounts, trust or company formations, we operate in 30 plus of the most tax-friendly jurisdictions around the globe to get you structured properly. Head to the link in the show notes to learn more and to get your global citizen journey underway today.
Yeah, that's very well explained. Thank you for that explanation. And I think that makes it very clear of, how important you're essentially doing somewhat of a sales role, and you're bringing everything to the table that needs to be brought to the table to make the deal for everybody else almost a no-brainer, as long as they have that capital. So I'm curious, now you have, as we've said, decades of experience in the industry. If somebody is looking to be the next Shannon Robnett and looking to really get involved in real estate and scale it to the level that you have, what would be some of the starting steps that you would say are important to take? And then I'm also curious, with your years of experience, what are some of the things that you have maybe taken a misstep on and you're like, I really messed up there, or that was a bad deal? I'm curious about both sides of that.
Well, I'll start with the mess up. And what I would tell someone, if I was having a conversation with my 20-year-old self, I would tell myself to go get a job. Right? I would tell myself to find someone that's doing what I want to do and insert myself into that organization. Find a way to get a seat at the table, to learn the skills, to learn the systems, to learn all the things that they already know. Because if you think about it, if you go to work for a general contractor, you're going to learn how contracts are written. You're going to learn how schedules are built. You're going to learn how timelines are met. You're going to learn all of those kinds of things. If you're working for a property management company, you're going to learn all about how to manage that property to where you can then become a professional, but you're going to get paid for it. You're actually going to get paid every 2 weeks. I didn't do that. Right? I went and learned all this stuff myself, and there were weeks and months and even years that I didn't make money to learn this stuff. And there are money lessons where I have lost money. Anybody that says that they've been in real estate for any duration of time that hasn't lost money is an absolute liar. There's no way to do it without having those bumps. I can say I've never lost investors' money, but that's because I came to a place where I feel that I have done all of the learning that I can to protect my investors. And our underwriting is very, very conservative for that reason, because I treat my investors' money more importantly than I treat my own. But I would say go get the job, learn from somebody else's decades of experience, learn from the machine they've built. And, I look at a mentor of mine, Ken McElroy, and, he started out in the property management business, working for someone, began to really understand property management, then built his property management company. That property management company was working for people who were buying apartment complexes. Ken was doing all the work to rehab them, turn them around. And then that person was selling and making all the profits. And Ken was sitting there looking at it going, this is nuts. I'm doing all the work. I might as well get on that side too. And so there's a lot of roles that you can fill for other people that will get you paid while you learn. And I think that's the most important thing that people need to figure out is how to become important to important people to where you'll get paid for the services that you provide while you learn all the things you can from them.
Totally. And it's also the connections that you make while you're there as well.
Oh,
You're kind of
100%.
leeching, not the best word, but off of somebody else's connections, quite honestly, which
Yeah.
is so profitable in business. So those are some of the things very interesting that you wish would have maybe looked different within your journey. What are some things that you think really led you on the pathway to success?
I think it was seeing my parents. My dad is the son of a union mechanic. There's not a lot of genius in that family. And I mean that respectfully because he's been able to figure out one or two things, right? And what he did, he repeated again and again and again, and he did it well. And at the end of that time, he was able to, by being committed to what he was doing, and figuring out one thing. I see people that, they're flipping houses and they're wholesaling and they're doing the BRRRR strategy and, they're doing all these things. Well, they're not going to get really good at one. My dad became really good at building industrial buildings, putting tenants in them. The triple net product is something I absolutely love because of how it works and because of how simple it is and what a no-brainer it is. But you just get good at a couple of things and use those to your advantage again and again, and you will be incredibly successful in what you're able to come up with and what you're able to do. And I think that is one of the things that I've followed. And you don't have to be in 150 businesses. You can be in one.
Okay, so kind of shifting a little bit, but still definitely very much so on the topic of real estate. I'm curious about and this is American specific, of course, but some of the tax incentives, and there are a lot, but some of the larger ones that you have taken advantage of to drastically reduce your taxes in real estate.
Well, the biggest one I took advantage of was I moved to Puerto Rico for 4 years. Because I'm in development, development is viewed as something that is created in the mind of the developer because it's my instruction. It's not that we're selling houses. If you're a realtor living in Puerto Rico, won't help you. But I was able to take advantage of that because Puerto Rico is a commonwealth of the United States. It doesn't pay federal income tax. So I was able to take advantage of that. But there's depreciation. There's Section 179. There are so many different things. And I think the biggest thing that people need to figure out, Nicole, is how to shift from looking at the IRS as a penal code. That tax book that's, I don't know, 3 times larger than the Bible is not there to tell you what you did wrong and what you have to pay. If you read it in reverse and you say, if I do this, I will receive these benefits. If I do that, I will pay these taxes. And if you really look at that, we've done everything from opportunity zones. We've done 1031 exchanges. We've done reverse 1031 exchanges. We've done depreciation events. We've torn buildings down. We've bought property, had appraisals done, and then torn the buildings down. We've donated them to the fire department and the police department to do their SWAT routines in and practice burning them down before they reduce them to the size that fits in a dump truck before we haul them off. And we've got benefit from those. So now we made a donation. And then we took the depreciation, right? And so when you look at how you can combine those things and really think outside of an accountant, because people rely on their accountant all the time, and an accountant counts things. They put what you did into an understandable format for the IRS. But what you really need is a tax strategist. You need to come up with a strategy that says, I am going to do these things and get these benefits. Then that goes to your accountant. Your accountant says, yes, I can put all that in boxes. So when you start to look at it that way, there's a lot of things that you can do. I mean, Nicole, I write off airplanes every year, right? Nice vehicles, I write those off, because I know what the tax code says. And then I combine that on top of business earnings and the way that those are treated and with my entity structures and all of that. So when you understand the tax code, again, you could spend the 10,000 hours to become that expert, or you could work with somebody that's a professional in there that is a strategist that is about designing the program so that you can work with, rather than just your accountant and trying to do that at your end.
Totally. And that is exactly what we do, more on a global scale, definitely less American, because it's tricky to get out of that system once you're in it. But we do the exact same thing, helping our clients with the strategy of what country is best, what citizenships, what residencies, what banking, what tax optimization around the globe. And definitely it's something that you can take advantage if you're in the US in that system in terms of real estate. So specific to some of those tax advantages, I'm curious what one or two of those specific instances have looked like. You mentioned a few, donations, vehicle write-offs and whatnot for the business, but I'm curious, specific to real estate, what a few of those have looked like that have been very beneficial.
Well, so let's take this example. Let's say that you have a house that you bought for $100,000 that's now worth $500,000, right? And let's say that you have a W-2 job where you're making $300,000 a year, right? If you set up a family foundation and you donate that house to the family foundation, you can donate 60% of your income every year to a family foundation or a nonprofit, right? So if you're making $250,000 a year or $300,000 a year, you can donate $200,000 of that roughly, right? So maybe it's a multi-year donation, but you've donated that value into that family foundation. Then that family foundation sells that. You made a donation, so the IRS looks at that and says, wow, Nicole, you are an incredibly benevolent person. You just gave away $200,000. They look at your taxes and they say you made $300,000. Your taxable income at this point is $100,000. And you do that again the second year. Now you've given away, but you haven't given anything away. The family foundation owns the asset. Once it's fully transferred, that family foundation sells that asset. You now have the ability inside that family foundation to do whatever you would like to continue to perpetuate that growth. Now, there are some rules in there about what you have to donate every year. But Nicole, I can only imagine that you are benevolent anyway. And now you're giving it out of your family foundation to meet those requirements. But you have just taken a very huge chunk of money. You look at what Bill and Melinda Gates have done. They didn't set up the family foundation because they wanted to be benevolent to the world. Let's be honest. They set up the family foundation to move all of these things because they had Microsoft stock that was at $2 that was now at $2,000 because of all the splits and everything. They moved all that to the foundation. They got credit for all of those donations, and then the foundation sold them and liquefied them and is now doing things with that, of which all of their children, all of their friends are board members, and they're all receiving salaries, right? So that's just one strategy. Another strategy that I see people do is they look at, okay, I'm going to buy, we did this with this office building that I'm in. We bought the office building, right? And there's only so much bonus depreciation that you can take on an office building. And when we bought the office building, we knew we were going to renovate it and remodel it. And so we took our cost estimates and we said, hey, we're going to spend about $2 million on renovation and remodel, and we're going to spend about $1 million acquiring the property. And so we took a group of investors in that came into the building and bought the building, and they got all the bonus depreciation. So they got almost dollar for dollar bonus depreciation to their investment. Then we took the other investors and we brought them in and we said, you guys are going to get the depreciation that comes from all of the Section 179 depreciation for tenant improvements, and that can be depreciated over the life of the lease. And so with 3-year leases, we were able to very quickly depreciate another $2 million. So by not just saying, hey, we're putting all this in one pile and we're going to bring everybody in and they're going to get a little bit of this and a little bit of that, we were able to maximize that for our investors and be able to do the things that were necessary to really knock that out of the park and get them all of the benefit that they could possibly get for the dollars that they put into the deal. And so just by looking at things like that, you're able to really make sure that you maximize that.
Are you a global citizen or digital nomad? One of the most difficult parts of this lifestyle is not being surrounded with a like-minded community. I've personally struggled with this, and most global citizens have as well. But now there's a simple solution. Fairytrail is the ultimate app for digital nomads, remote workers, and even van lifers. Whether you're a solo traveler, a couple, or a family, Fairytrail helps you connect with like-minded adventurers. 93% of the Fairytrail community are fully remote or aspiring to be. And for being a podcast listener, use the code WORKWealthTravel for a free lifetime membership for a limited time. Download the Fairytrail app today on the App Store or Google Play Store and get connected with your like-minded community worldwide.
I love that. And I love, what you're doing of really taking a look at the tax code and viewing it as more of a manual of what can be done and what will not be incentivized by the government. And it's unique, it's different. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the US, if you want to be successful, you have to look at it that way instead of looking at it, as a W-2 employee where your tax dollars and everything goes out first and then you have the leftover spending money at the end. So this has been a very interesting conversation. Now, of course, there's a lot that we didn't cover in terms of real estate. I'm curious if there is anything additional that you would like to add to this conversation that we have not touched on yet.
Well, if you're getting the right advisors around you, there's very little work for you to do. And I look at a lot of people, and I think that there are too many people in the U.S. that have bought into the whole, you got to work hard. You got to, you really got to grind. You got to, and you can, but it doesn't mean you have to. You can really surround yourself with the professionals that have already done that grinding. And yes, it costs more than picking up a copy of the IRS tax code and starting to read it from front to back, right? It's going to be more expensive for that, but you're paying for their expertise. And I would encourage people to pay for other people's expertise because you will go farther faster and you will wind up with less mistakes and less expensive lessons. And if you do that and you're protecting your tax dollars, because the thing is that a lot of people don't understand is by the time you get done in the typical American household of actually putting the phone on your desk or the computer or the carpet in your house, by the time you get done actually spending the money, you've spent over 50% of that originally earned dollar on taxes, whether it's your income tax, whether it's your property tax, whether it's your sales tax, all of those things add up, right? But if you're finding ways that are making that tax efficient, let's say you're only cutting that in half. That means that you have 25% more to invest in your investments, which means that they'll grow 25% faster. And if you look at Warren Buffett's statement about compounding interest as the eighth wonder of the world, you just saved and invested 25% more into something that is going to be compounding, that is going to get you to your goal faster. So I think that a lot of people need to take a step back, not look at them working so hard, but employing the professionals that will work harder and smarter for them, free up more time for them to go do the things that energize them, that create the lifestyle that they're looking for. And by doing those in a tax efficient way, you're going to get there faster than doing it your stinking self anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious in your opinion, do you think that in the American mindset, it's changing where people are realizing that being an entrepreneur and owning real estate can have a lot of benefits and, of course, tax benefits? Do you see that change?
I do see that that, we hear everybody bagging on millennials, right? But I do see that the millennial generation is trying to figure out ways to work smarter, not harder. They're not real interested in doing the 65 hours a week that their parents did, right? And the 80 hours a week that their grandparents did. They're looking for ways to work smarter. I don't know that the American public, by and large, has woke up to the fact that the tax code is an incentive code. I think that most people have just resigned themselves to paying taxes and calling people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos cheaters, or even, Donald Trump is a favorite target, right? He's cheating the tax code. No, he's using a legal thing that's built in there. And the reality that if people can understand this, the people that write those laws go to Congress and come out wealthy because those laws were built for them. You just have to learn how to use their loopholes, the things that they created for themselves and their friends. You have to learn to use those your way. You have to learn to use those in a fashion that makes you able to take advantage of what the rich have already put in there, and they've hired all the people to do all the research to make the loophole perfect.
One thing that really gets me going, and I will say, I am not a multimillionaire, but and you see this in America, but you also see this in other countries around the globe, unfortunately, increasingly as well, where the middle class just hate the wealthy and think that they are taking advantage of everything to be taken advantage of. And the way that I see it, and I think the way that a lot of entrepreneurs hopefully see it, at least in America, is that these are people who are working smart. They're working hard, but they're also working smart, and they're taking advantage of what their country is putting in place for them. And it's not that they're greedy people. Some of them are, yes, that's always going to happen in the world, but it's not that they're these horrible, greedy people who, should be imprisoned for the next 10 years, but they're actually very smart individuals, and we can learn a lot from them if we turn that almost, unfortunately, hatred into more of a respect and a wanting to learn from them.
Let's take what Jeff Bezos just did. Jeff just moved Bezos, everybody's going to argue about how you say it. I've never personally talked to him, so I don't know how he says it. But he just moved to Florida, right? Because Washington just said, hey, we're going to put all of this tax on capital gains. Well, Jeff has already told everybody, because he has to disclose as a shareholder of Amazon, he's already told everybody he's selling a bunch of stock. That's a capital gain event. So if he's a resident of Washington, he's going to pay an estimated $600 million in taxes. Florida does not have that tax. So Jeff has moved to Florida to save himself a huge chunk of that $600 million in tax money. And so and I don't want to say envy them, but emulate them. You see all the time, there's stock trading accounts that all they do is mimic the stock trades of the senators, right? Well, mimic the things of the people that have what you don't to get what they have, right? And it's a copycat game. When you look at it, Jeff didn't come up with this strategy. Somebody in his office that he hired that's much smarter at those kind of things came to him and said, hey, Jeff, how much do you like Washington? Oh, man, I love Washington. Do you love it $600 million worth? Nope. Right. So they got U-Haul and they're on their way to Florida. And so those are the kind of things I completely agree with you, Nicole. If you will look at that and let the envy or the hatred turn to respect and then emulate that, you will wind up in a place, in a situation where you're going to get there faster by being a copycat and doing what they do to have what they have.
Absolutely. Could not agree more. Well, this has been a very interesting discussion. So where can people find you online?
The easiest place to find me is just right at shannonrobnett.com. We've got opportunities to invest there. We've got job site cameras there. There's even a link to my calendar if you want to grab a 15-minute phone call and talk about what we can do to help you on your journey. I love that. All my social channels are there, just right there at shannonrobnett.com.
And I'm curious, what do some of those opportunities to invest that are on the website look like?
We've got everything from industrial warehouse. We've got opportunities in Florida, Houston, Texas, Idaho. We look at deal specific or market specific first, and then deal specific. But those are typically turning a 6 to 7% cash on cash and a 14 to 20% modeled IRR. And we've always exceeded those numbers because we like to be conservative in our modeling. So that's all there for you.
Awesome. Well, all the links are below. Shannon, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you, Nicole, for having me.
You've just listened to the Work, Wealth, and Travel podcast. If anything from this episode resonated with you, I would appreciate if you share this podcast on your socials. And of course, be sure to tag me. And don't forget to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for joining me on this global citizen journey, and I'll see you in the next episode.